Good afternoon, members. I'm Kevin McCarthy, President of the Arizona Tax Research Association, in opposition. You're all familiar with the negative aspects of pork barrel spending in Washington. Arizona broke into this in the 90s when somebody showed up at the Capitol and said, hey, I want to build a theme park in Gilbert. And since it's not there now, how about you let me keep the sales tax revenue associated with the theme park, and that'll help pay for the infrastructure. We made the argument that to lawmakers, and faced with the same decision you have, if you do this, everybody's going to notice, and cities and developers are going to show up and say, that same deal that you gave to those folks, we'd like it in our city. It passed, it exploded. We had every city and developer with a good idea show up and say, we want the same your sales tax money that you appropriate to schools and prisons, we'd like to keep it for our development. This worked out so poorly that by '99 lawmakers repealed the TIF statutes, but not until they passed one more. And the politics associated with this one was very simple. Tucson needed its turn for a good deal, and we want the Rio Nuevo project passed, and it passed. We urge you to not continue this and as we listen to this argument, if this is a partisan issue of some sorts, maybe there's the folks live down there notice who does business better. Keep Rio Nuevo intact. They do not need the sales tax increment financing beyond 2025. You could keep them, as far as we're concerned, you can keep them in place forever.
Thank you.
But the TIF should stop at 2025.
Questions? Senator Worsley.
Mr. Chairman, and if I could just ask a quick question. I ran the bill to help these guys out a couple years ago. Help us all again understand how much money has been round-tripped down to the Rio Nuevo so far, and by the 10-year extension, how much more would be sent down to Tucson?
Mr. McCarthy.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Worsley, by our count, it's roughly $150 million that you have pumped into Tucson. By the way, you pumped some $70 million during the depth of the recession when you were cutting schools and everybody else, because this isn't appropriated. You pumped $70 million into Rio Nuevo. By our count, it would have to at least double that from here on out if you run it out to 2020, 35. And I would encourage you, check for a fiscal note, and we'd encourage you to get a deeper understanding of exactly how much money you're indirectly appropriating there if you are to extend it. But again, they have a powerful tool with Jeeplet. I went for the tour. They're right. There's a lot of great things happening down there. By the way, every one of your cities would love to have this same tool. There's nothing unique about this. The Jeeplet tool that they've got, they could continue to keep. They could continue to do the business they're doing. They do not need the sales tax TIF beyond 2025.
Any other questions? So, Mr. McCarthy, I have one. So, what would you recommend then, especially when you heard the sponsor say, City of Tucson hasn't been the best steward for this bill, and so, do you not agree with the assertion that, hey, if we wind it down correctly and actually get the right people to run it, who do you think should have final closure on this, and who should run it then if we don't extend it? Who do you think would be the best entity to do it?
Well, Mr. Chairman, our argument, I'm not going to stand up here and make claims that the City of Tucson's incompetent and that you ought to pass this bill to simply avoid having this go back to them. Point is, if that's a winning argument, then keep Rio Nuevo in place. Keep it in place to 2045. Stop the sales tax TIF, the bleeding associated with this at 2025, what's on the books. The only reason that was extended was because of the massive amount of debt that was outstanding that you all didn't want to pay, and you kept it in place for them to be able to finance the debt service. Why in the world you'd extend it beyond 2025, even if there's a political problem down there? To be honest, keep it in place, but stop the TIF.
Any other questions, members? Thank you very much. Appreciate your testimony.